There is a kind of silence that does not come from peace. Sometimes, it comes from people who have asked for help so many times that even their empty bottles begin to speak for them. Thank you for spending a little time here today. If this kind of thoughtful science fiction means something to you, a like, a comment, or share truly helps the channel grow. Now, let's follow one quiet discovery at an Earthport and see why a small, empty bottle can carry the weight of an entire world. The first thing Nora Hayes noticed was not the broken seal. It was the way the cargo crew avoided looking at the small side compartment. The mineral hauler had come into Harrogate Port after midnight, riding a slow approach lane above the Atlantic side of Earth. Its hull was still hot from atmospheric braking. Fine gray dust slid from its lower plates and gathered in the grooves of the inspection floor. Under the white port lights, the ship looked less like a vessel and more like a piece of desert that had learned to fly. Nora stood beneath it with a scanner in one hand and a sample case in the other. She wore a pale utility jacket with a blue mark of Earth water recovery on the sleeve. Her hair was tied back. Her boots were already covered in Veyrra dust. "Hold the line right there," she said. The cargo supervisor froze beside the access ramp. "Is there a contamination issue?" "Not yet," Nora said. "That is why we check." Her voice was calm enough that the man did not argue. Nora Hayes did not raise her voice at a leak, a panic, a false manifest, or a fire alarm. She had spent too many years in flood zones, burned-out settlements, and refugee camps where clean water mattered more than anyone's pride. When Nora sounded quiet, it usually meant she had already found something. Janet Cole, the port coordinator, hurried over with a tablet tucked under her arm. "Nora, side compartment 7 is flagged." "Flagged how?" "Wrong seal pattern. Not broken exactly. More like someone resealed it with an old dock stamp and hoped nobody would care." Owen Briggs came behind her, heavy-shouldered and watchful in a dark security vest. He glanced at the crew, then at the compartment door. "You, want me to open it?" Nora looked at the ship's manifest. It listed ore bricks, filtration-grade sand, 3 crates of worn mining tools, and sealed waste from a private refinery on Veyrra. Nothing about the side compartment. "Yes," she said, slowly. The cargo supervisor stepped forward. "That compartment is private carrier property." Owen did not move his eyes from the man's face. "Then you can privately wait behind a yellow line." The door released with a tired metallic cough. Nora expected many things. Idenore, unregistered biomatter. Contraband water, perhaps, though that would have been strange on a ship coming from Veyrra, a desert world known across shipping lanes for drought and debt. She did not expect hundreds of empty bottles. They were not identical. Some were clay-colored and hand-fired. Some were made from cheap industrial plastic. Some were metal canisters, dented by long use. They were stacked in rows from floor to ceiling, each one padded with strips of cloth so it would not crack during flight. Every bottle was empty. Owen frowned. "That is a lot of nothing." Nora stepped closer. "Not nothing," she said. On each bottle, someone had scratched small marks into the surface. There were symbols that looked like family marks, ration numbers, and tally lines. Nora lifted one bottle and turned it toward the light. In the bottom, barely visible, one dull bead of cloudy liquid clung to a scratch. She opened her sample case. The cargo supervisor's mouth tightened. "You cannot test those without corporate permission." Nora slid the sample tube beneath the bottle's lip. "I can test any unlisted material brought through an Earthport. They are empty. Then your company should not mind." Nobody spoke while the analyzer took the sample. The little machine hummed for several seconds, then gave a soft chime. Nora read the first line, then the second. She stopped breathing for half a second. Janet saw her face. "What is it?" Nora looked back into the compartment full of empty vessels. "Deep aquifer water." Owen blinked. "From a desert planet?" "From under one." "Then why send empty bottles?" Nora did not answer at once. She turned the bottle again and found a thin strip of fiber sealed inside the cap. It was not packaging. It was deliberate. Janet pulled up a translation program. The script was Veyrran, rough and compressed. The first pass came through broken. The second came through clear enough. "We're not asking for wealth. We are asking to drink." The cargo supervisor went pale. Nora kept her eyes on the words. She had seen water crimes before. Cities where pipes ran only to the rich district. Settlements where water trucks arrived after cameras did. Camps where the price of a cup changed with the desperation of the crowd. But this was different. This was not a bucket left outside an office. This was 100 families putting their last empty bottles on a ship to Earth because the rest of the galaxy had stopped listening. Janet Norris said, "Seal the compartment under environmental hold." The supervisor snapped, "You have no authority to hold corporate containers." Owen took one step toward him. "You heard her." "Nora," Janet said quietly, reading incoming port traffic, "we just got a message from Asterion Water Consortium." Nora did not look away from the bottles. "Already, they are demanding immediate return of all distribution vessels. They say the bottles are registered property of their water network." Owen stared into the compartment. "They want the empty bottles back?" Nora picked up the one with the message still in its cap. For the first time that night, anger touched her face, not loud, not theatrical, but sharp enough for everyone near her to feel it. "They do not want the bottles," she said. "They want the cry for help." By morning, the story had not reached the public, but it had reached every office that could make Nora's work harder. Asterion Water Consortium sent 3 formal notices before sunrise. The first accused Harrogate Port of interfering with licensed property. The second warned Earth Water Recovery not to tamper with sealed distribution assets. The third named Nora Hayes personally and reminded her that Veyrra's water system was protected under a Galactic Council recognized resource contract. Nora read all 3 at a metal table in the port lab while Dr. Simon Avery studied. The sample under a spectrographic array. Simon was thin, gray-haired, and too gentle to sound frightened, even when he should have been. "This is old water," he said. "Old how?" "Deep aquifer. Mineral profile suggests it has been underground for thousands of years. Not surface runoff. Not imported. This came from Veyrra. Could there be enough to supply a settlement?" Simon adjusted the display. "Nora, this profile does not come from puddle. It comes from a real reserve." Janet stood by the door, tablet pressed against her chest. "The public reports say Veyrra is water poor." Nora leaned over the display. "Water poor is not the same as empty." "No," Simon said. "And there is something else." He brought up a second line of data. Nora watched the chemical signatures spread across the screen. "Industrial stabilizers," she said. "Mining grade. Trace amount, but not natural. Whoever collected this water took it from a source touched by, or processing, or deep extraction waste." Nora's jaw tightened. "Can it be filtered?" "Yes, with the right system." "Would a poor settlement have that system?" Simon looked at the wall of bottles behind the lab glass. "I think we already know the answer." Janet's tablet chimed again. She read silently. "Asterion wants a meeting. Director Callan, Strake himself. Tell him he can send documentation." He did. 200 pages. Nora rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Of course he did." Owen stepped into the lab with a small evidence pouch. "We found another cap with a fiber strip. This one has audio. The recording was damaged." A thin alien voice came through under static, speaking Veyrran. The translation came a few seconds behind. "My name is Tavanara. I am from the lower wells. If this reaches Earth, do not send soldiers. Asterion wants soldiers. Soldiers make contracts stronger. Send away to clean water. Send someone who knows pipes. Send someone who will not sell the well back to us." The voice broke for a moment. In the background, Nora heard coughing, a child, and a metal cup scraping against stone. "We have water beneath us," Tavan continued. "We can hear it in the old shafts. We're not allowed to touch it. Our children wear debt bands now. Our elders give up their ration before dawn so the small ones can swallow. The council says the contract is legal. The buyers say the or must keep moving. Asterion says thirst is a distribution problem." The recording cut, then returned. "If Earth is still what the stories say, please listen before they take even the empty bottles back." The lab was silent after the audio ended. Janet lowered the tablet. Owen looked at Nora. "What stories?" Nora kept her gaze on the waveform frozen on the screen. "The ones people tell when every official door has closed." Asterion's first live representative arrived that afternoon by remote projection. Director Callan Strake appeared in the port conference room as a tall man in a charcoal suit with silver at his temples and a voice polished smooth by years of never needing to shout. Nora sat across from the projection with Paula Grant from Earth's Humanitarian Office, Janet Cole, and Owen Briggs beside her. Paula had the composed face of someone who had spent half her career keeping disasters from becoming wars. "Ms. Hayes," Strake said, "your concern is admirable, but misplaced. Veyrra's water system is not a humanitarian failure. It is a licensed survival infrastructure managed under Council-approved terms." "Survival infrastructure," Nora repeated. "That is a clean phrase for a locked faucet." Strake smiled with almost no warmth. "Emotional language does not alter legal status. Neither does legal language alter dehydration." Paula gave Nora a warning glance, but did not interrupt. Strake continued. "The containers found aboard the hauler were removed from a regulated distribution chain. Returning them is not optional." "They were empty," Nora said. "They remain property of Asterion Water Consortium." "Do you hear yourself?" "I hear a professional attempting to prevent a local dispute from becoming an interstellar incident." Nora leaned back. "A local dispute does not hide messages in bottle caps and send them to Earth." For the first time, Strake's expression tightened. "The individuals who smuggled those containers do not represent Veyrra. They're a destabilized fringe group in the lower wells, a region, with a documented history of mismanagement and water theft." "Water theft," Nora said, "from their own aquifer, from a system they're not qualified to operate." "Then show us the independent safety reports." Strake's smile returned. "Those reports are proprietary." Paula spoke before Nora could. "Director Strake, Earth is placing the containers under temporary humanitarian evidence protection. We are not releasing them until we complete environmental and medical review." "That would be a violation. It would be a delay," Paula said. "You know the difference." Strake turned his gaze back to Nora. "Be careful, Ms. Hayes. Communities like the lower wells often use sympathetic outsiders until the damage is done. They want you to believe this is about a child with a cup. It is not. It is about control of a resource network that keeps millions alive." Nora's voice went quieter. "If your network keeps them alive, why are they sending us their empty bottles?" The projection ended without an answer. The first image from the lower wells came that night. It did not come through an official channel. It arrived in fragments, routed through an old mining relay and a battered emergency transmitter that kept dropping signal. Miles Rowan, the Earth engineer Nora trusted most, spent 2 hours cleaning the feed until the picture held steady. The screen showed a settlement cut into pale stone under a white sun. Low shelters leaned against the sides of old mining cuts. Wind dragged dust through narrow streets. In the distance stood Asterion's water towers, smooth and sealed, rising above the community like a row of cold metal priests. People lined up below them with bottles in their hands. No one pushed. That was what hurt most. They were too tired for panic. Children stood against their parents' legs. Older Veyrrans sat in the dust, their long fingers folded around ration bands at their wrists. The bands blinked blue for active, yellow for reduced, red for suspended. A woman came into view carrying a small child. "This is Sarah Nevi," Tavin's voice said through the connection. He appeared on the edge of the screen, younger than Nora had imagined, with dust in the lines of his face and fear hidden badly under stubbornness. "Her son is Veyon Tal." Sarah looked at the camera. Her eyes were dark and wide, set in a face shaped by heat and hunger, but not surrender. Veyon rested against her shoulder. He had a child's narrow limbs and a cracked lower lip. He was not crying. Nora knew what that meant. Children who still had strength cried. Sarah spoke, and the translator caught up. "Are you the water woman from Earth?" Nora swallowed. "My name is Nora Hayes. I am a water recovery specialist. Can you clean a small well? If the water source is stable and we can test it, yes." "Before 3 days?" Nora looked at Simon. Then Miles. Neither man answered. They knew better than to promise blind. "I need data," Nora said. "Depth, flow, contamination, pipe material, anything you have." A new figure stepped into view. She was younger than Sarah, with a tool belt made from old pump parts. I am Kesarun. I can send readings from the old line. You are a technician? Nora asked. Kessa's expression hardened. I was an apprentice before Asterion banned local repair. Then you are still a technician, Nora said. Kessa stared at her for a moment, as if she was not used to hearing the title without mockery. An older Veyrran came forward with a wrapped sheet of thin stone. Tavin helped him hold it to the camera. Lines had been etched into it by hand, some so old the grooves were almost smooth. This is Yellow Marin, Tavin said. He keeps the old water paths. Yellow spoke slowly. Before the drought years, our wells belonged to families, temples, schools, markets. Then Asterion came with machines. They said they would hold the water only until we recovered. That was my grandfather's lifetime. He touched the map with one long finger. This line still sings under the lower wells. Nora leaned closer. Sings? Kessa answered. You can hear water through the stone when the wind is still. Asterion says it is pressure echo. We know the difference. Sarah adjusted Veyrra against her chest. I do not need all of Veyrra saved tonight, Nora Hayes. I need my son to last long enough to see one cup that does not belong to them. The room in Harrogate seemed to fall away. Around Nora, she saw the child, the empty bottles, the towers, the ration bans. She had been in rooms where people argued over water rights with polished voices while children waited outside with swollen tongues. She had learned, over the years, that cruelty often wore clean clothes. It did not always arrive with guns. Sometimes it arrived with contracts, safety rules, and a careful note explaining why help had to wait. Nora set both hands on the table. Kessa, she said, send me every reading you can get. Yellow, keep that map close. Tavin, do not move people toward the towers. If they want to riot, do not give them one. Sarah, give Veyrra the smallest sips you can, even if he begs. Sarah closed her eyes for 1 second. There is not much left. I know, Nora said. Then we make what is left count. They worked in a maintenance bay beside the port lab. Simon ran water samples through contamination cycles. Janet watched the evidence archive. Owen kept Asterion's lawyers from entering the bay. Paula Grant spent most of the day on calls with offices that used cautious phrases like jurisdictional review and reciprocal trade exposure. Nora ignored the phrases until Paula came to the bay with her face drawn tight. We have a council notice, Paula said. Miles stopped tightening the frame. Nora wiped her hands on a cloth. What kind? Temporary non-interference request. Request or order? Written like a request. Backed like an order. Nora took the tablet. Counselor Arvin Pell's message was polite, formal, and deadly in the way only polite documents could be. Earth was instructed to refrain from transferring water processing technology to any party on Veyrra until the Galactic Council reviewed Asterion's contract claims. The message expressed concern for all affected communities and confidence that established mechanisms would prevent unnecessary harm. Nora looked up. How long is review? Paula did not answer. How long? Initial session in 12 days. Miles let out a hard laugh. They have 2 or 3. Paula said, I know. Nora set the tablet down. Then it is not a review. It is a way to keep our hands clean while people die. Paula lowered her voice. Nora, listen to me. If you send that filter design now, Asterion can claim Earth interfered with a council-recognized resource contract. They can push for sanctions. They can demand your suspension. They can even request custody for questioning if they frame this as industrial sabotage. Can they cut off medical transit? They can make it harder. Can they block supplies? Some. Can they punish the lower wells? Paula's silence was enough. Nora looked back at the filter. Its frame was crooked. One membrane had to be replaced. The pump coupler was too loud. But the test water passing through it came out clear enough for human emergency standards and close to Veyrran safety margins. They already punished them, Nora said. The next transmission from Veyrra proved it. Lower wells had been reduced to emergency allotment. Asterion called it distribution stabilization after unauthorized disturbance. In the video, a tower gate stayed closed while families waited in the heat. A small sign glowed above the dispenser. Suspended pending review. Sarah held Veyrra in the shade of a wall. He was awake, barely. Tavin stood beside her with anger shaking through his body. They say someone stole company property, he said. The bottles, Nora said. Yes. Empty bottles. They cut water because of empty bottles. Kessa's face appeared close to the transmitter. I sent the readings. Did you get them? We did, Nora said. The old line is real. Kessa's mouth parted. It could be used. If the blockage is where I think it is, yes. Elo's voice came from behind them. Asterion sealed the first well station when I was young. They said the water was unsafe. It is unsafe without filtration, Nora said. Not impossible. That is not the same thing. No, Nora said. It is not. The words hung between Earth and Veyrra. Kessa lifted her chin. Teach me. Nora glanced at the council notice on the tablet, then at the filter, then at the child on the screen. All right, she said. First, I need you to stop thinking of the filter as a machine they own. It is a path. Dirty water comes in. Each layer takes away one danger. Sediment first. Chemical load next. Microbial risk after that. Then you test. You do not trust clear water just because it looks kind. Clear water can still kill. Kessa nodded hard. For the next hour, Nora taught through a damaged signal while Miles adjusted diagrams and Simon simplified chemical warnings. Kessa repeated every step back, not like a student memorizing words, but like a person taking back a stolen language. At the end, Yellow placed his palm on the old map. My mother said water remembers the first hand that finds it, he said. I thought that was only a story. Nora looked at the screen. Stories are how people keep maps when someone takes the paper. Kessa's eyes shone, but she did not cry. If Earth gives us this, will Earth own the well? No, Nora said. That does not help. That is just a new lock. The middle days of a crisis were always the most dangerous. The first shock had passed. The final decision had not yet arrived. That was when institutions tried to turn human suffering back into paperwork. Asterion flooded the public channels with images of broken pipes and contaminated pools from old Veyrra settlements. Mira Dast appeared in clean light before a blue corporate backdrop. The lower well situation is tragic, she said, but it exists because untrained local actors repeatedly damage a fragile water system. Asterion's role has always been protective. Outside interference, especially from Earth, risks mass poisoning under the banner of compassion. The clip spread quickly. Then another clip followed. It showed Nora in the port bay beside the ugly filter, stripped of context. The caption read, Earth technician builds illegal device for unstable water rebels. Owen found her watching it late in the lab. You should sleep, he said. I will. That means you will not. Nora closed the feed. They're setting the story before we can set the facts. Can we set the facts? Yes. Can we do it fast? Nora looked toward Simon's station. The older scientist sat surrounded by old contract files, his glasses low on his nose. Miles had found shipping records from the first Asterion relief mission to Veyrra. Janet had pulled port archives showing mineral extraction spikes after every contract extension. We can do it. Honestly, Nora said. Fast is harder. Simon raised a hand without looking up. I found something. They gathered around his screen. The original council emergency license, Simon said. Asterion was granted temporary management of Veyrra's central wells after the long drought. Term limit was 10 years. Miles frowned. Temporary? Yes. After that, operational authority was supposed to return to local water councils. Nora leaned closer. Why did it not? Simon opened another file. Maintenance debt. Safety failures. Environmental instability. Every time transfer approached, Asterion reported new risk factors. Each one extended oversight. Who verified the risk? Asterion's own audit division. Miles swore under his breath. Simon brought up a chemical chart. And these environmental instability reports matched the years when extraction waste increased in the Lower Wells region. Nora felt something cold settle in her stomach. They polluted the water. Not everywhere, Simon said. Not enough to destroy the aquifer. Just enough to make untreated access dangerous. Just enough to justify keeping the filters under corporate control. Owen stared at the screen. They poisoned the lock and sold the key. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Paula entered the lab with 2 security officers behind her. Her face told Nora the news before she said it. Asterion has filed a formal complaint, Paula said. They are requesting your suspension from all interstellar humanitarian operations. Nora nodded once. Expected. They are also requesting that Earth surrender all evidence containers and cease direct contact with lower wells. Not happening. Nora. Nora looked at Paula. Paula stepped closer and lowered her voice. I'm not your enemy, but you need to understand what is coming. 3 trade partners have signaled they may suspend mineral exchange if Earth escalates. Counselor Pell is asking for a closed session. Asterion is framing you as the spark that could destabilize Veyrra. Veyrra is already destabilized. I know. Then why do you sound like you are asking me to stop? Because I'm asking you to know the cost before you continue. Nora looked through the lab glass at the empty bottles. Each one waited in its quiet row. I know the cost of continuing, she said. Do they know the cost of stopping? Paula's expression softened, and for the first time that day, she looked tired rather than official. Lower Wells has requested medical evacuation for 37 children and 12 elders, she said. Asterion is refusing transit clearance. Nora went still. Paula continued. Earth can open emergency sanctuary status. If we do, Asterion will call it extraction of contract labor dependents. Council review will get uglier. Open it. It needs authorization. Then authorize it. Paula's eyes held hers. That will not be a port decision anymore. That will be Earth standing behind you. Nora did not flinch. Good. By the time Earth's humanitarian office announced the open water refuge, the news had already reached Veyrra. It was not a grand facility at first. It was a converted coastal recovery center in northern Africa, built for climate evacuations and later expanded for off-world biological needs. It had water treatment rooms, quarantine gardens, gravity-adjusted beds, and staff who knew how to welcome people without turning them into exhibits. Earth opened it for Veyrran children, elders, and the medically fragile. Asterion called it theft. Miradas called it emotional piracy. Some council members called it premature. Nora called it a door. The first evacuation shuttle should have launched from Veyrra within hours. It did not. Marshal Rocade blocked the local pad, claiming passenger hydration status had to be verified by Asterion before departure. They're delaying until the children are too weak to move, Miles said. Nora checked the filter crates. Then we stopped waiting for them to make cruelty convenient. Owen folded his arms. Define we. A small technical team goes to Veyrra. Paula, on the wall screen from the humanitarian office, closed her eyes briefly. Nora, you opened the refuge, Nora said. Now I need to make sure people can reach it. And Lower Wells still needs water. Counselor Pell has repeated the non-interference order. Counselor Pell is not holding a dehydrated child. Paula did not. Answer at once. Nora softened her voice. I'm not asking for soldiers. I am asking for clearance to deliver emergency filtration equipment and medical stabilizers under Earth humanitarian authority. Asterion will say you are exporting illegal infrastructure. Then let them say it while the cameras show what we actually bring. Owen said, I am going. Nora looked at him. This is not a security raid. Good. I hate raids. I'm still going. Miles lifted a hand. I built half that ugly filter. I go too. Simon shook his head. I am too old for desert heroics, but I will stay here and keep the data alive. If they falsify one reading, I want to see them try in front of me. Paula looked at each of them on her screen. Then she exhaled. Earth will not send a military escort, but I can authorize a humanitarian technical mission. Nora nodded. That is all we need. No, Paula said. It is not all. You need to understand something. If you activate a water system on Veyrra against council instruction, I may not be able to shield you from investigation. I understand. You may lose your certification. I understand. Earth may take a trade hit for this. Nora glanced toward the bottle with Tavin's message, now sealed in a clear evidence case. If the price of clean hands is a dead settlement, she said, our hands were never clean. The shuttle down to Veyrra passed over a desert the color of old bone. From orbit, the planet looked almost peaceful. Pale dune seas, dark cuts of mining scars, thin ribbons of cloud too high to matter. As the shuttle descended, the scars grew wider. Open pits, conveyor roads, refinery stacks, Asterion towers standing where old riverbeds should have been. Lower wells came into view near sunset. The settlement was smaller than Nora expected and larger than she could bear. It clung to the rim of an old extraction basin. Low homes pressed together for shade. Dust moved through the streets like smoke. At the center stood the sealed structure Yellow had called the first well station. It was not impressive. A low stone building, half buried, with old Veyrra carvings worn smooth by wind. Behind it, Asterion had built a metal control tower and a locked pump array. The contrast looked obscene. The shuttle landed outside the settlement under the stare of hundreds of silent people. Nora stepped down first. Heat struck her through the suit fabric. It had weight. It pressed against her eyes and throat. She tasted mineral dust on her tongue. Tavanara met her at the edge of the landing pad. He was thinner than he had looked on screen. "You came," he said, as if the words were dangerous. Nora took his hand. "You send directions." Kessa Ruin stood beside him with a tool bag across her shoulder. She looked at the crates being unloaded. "Is that the filter?" "Parts of it," Nora said. "The rest is you." Kessa's face changed, just slightly. Sarah Nuvai came forward carrying Veyon. The child looked at Nora with unfocused eyes. Nora knelt, so she was not towering over them. "Hello, Veyon," Sarah said. "He knows your voice." Nora did not trust herself to answer that. She opened her medical kit and checked the child's hydration markers with gentle hands. The readings were bad. "We need to get him stable," she said. "Can he go to Earth?" "Yes." Sarah looked toward the old well station. After the first water, Nora looked up. "Sarah, he needs treatment. And if he leaves before seeing it, he will think Earth was the only place water exists." Sarah's voice trembled, but did not break. "I need him to know Veyrra did not abandon him. It was taken from him." Nora held her gaze. Then she nodded. "Then we work fast." Yellow Marin waited at the station entrance with a stone map wrapped in cloth. He placed it in Nora's hands with ceremony, but not submission. "This does not make the well yours," he said. "No," Nora said. "It makes the path visible." Inside the old station, the air was cooler. The walls carried faint carvings of hands, waves, and lines that might have been families or rivers. Asterion's metal pipes ran through the center like an insult, bolted over older channels. Kessa knelt beside a floor panel and pried it open. "Here." Nora crouched next to her. A low sound rose from below, almost too deep to hear. Not a machine, not wind, water moving in the dark. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Miles whispered, "Well, will be damned." Kessa looked at Nora, eyes fierce. "It sings." Nora set her scanner over the opening. "Flow is present. Low pressure, but present. Can we use it? If the blockage is downstream and the contamination is what we think, yes." Owen's voice came from the doorway. "We have company." Marshal Rocade arrived with 8 armed security officers in gray Asterion gear. He was broad, expressionless, and carried himself like a man who had made a career out of standing between desperate people and locked doors. "This site is under Asterion authority," he said. "Remove your equipment." Nora stood. "We are here under Earth humanitarian clearance." Earth clearance has no standing over Veyrra water infrastructure. Kessa stepped forward. "This station is older than Asterion." Rocade did not look at her. "Unauthorized local access is prohibited." Nora moved so that Kessa was no longer directly in front of him. There are dehydrated civilians outside. Distribution was suspended due to theft and civil instability. "Theft of empty bottles? Company property." Owen muttered, "You people really do hear yourselves and keep talking." Rocade raised one hand. His officers shifted their weapons. Nora did not move. "We are testing a non-corporate water path for emergency medical use. You can observe. You cannot interfere. I have orders to shut this down. And I have a child outside with failing hydration markers. So unless your orders can give him water, they can wait in line." For several seconds, the old station held only the sound of the water below and the breathing of people who knew the wrong movement could turn rescue into violence. Then Rocade stepped back to the entrance. Proceeding will be recorded as sabotage. Record everything, Nora said. Start with the child. Veyrra's broadcast went live an hour later. A small drone hovered beyond the crowd, projecting her voice across galactic channels. Her tone was grave and wounded. Earth personnel have entered a protected water facility on Veyrra, accompanied by local agitators. Asterion urges calm. We have warned repeatedly that untrained tampering may poison the very people Earth claims to protect. Nora heard the broadcast while lying half under a pipe assembly with one shoulder pressed against hot stone. Untrained, Kessa said from the control panel, bitter. Nora tightened the coupling. Let her talk. She is making us look dangerous. Then we make the water safe. Miles fed a hose through the old channel. Pressure is dropping. Nora slid out and checked the gauge. It was falling too fast. That is not natural. Kessa ran to the side panel. The old line is open, but the corporate bypass is pulling against it. Can you isolate? I can try. Nora followed the pipe with her eyes. Newer Asterion metal crossed over the old Veyrra channel and disappeared through a sealed control box. The locking plate looked intact, but one side had been disturbed. She touched the seam. Fresh grit. Tool marks. They sabotaged their own bypass, she said. Miles came over. To do what? Backwash contaminated water into our line when we open pressure. If that happens on broadcast, they call our filter unsafe. Kessa's face went gray. Then we cannot open it. Not through that line. There is no other. Yellow, who had been watching from the doorway, spoke. There is. Kessa turned. Yellow. The old man unwrapped the map and pointed to a faint side channel. Temple return path. It was for overflow during flood years. Kessa shook her head. That path is ceremonial. It is too narrow. For old machines, Yellow said. Not for their machines. Nora looked at the map, then at the floor, then at the filter crates. Miles! He leaned in. If we run low pressure through the return path and stage the filtration in 2 passes, can we get enough for drinking water? Enough for a settlement? Enough for the first medical allotment? Miles did the math in his head. Maybe. Nora turned to Kessa. You know where this path opens? Kessa took one breath, then another. Under the east basin. Can you guide me? Yes. Outside, the crowd had grown. People did not cheer when Nora and Kessa emerged with tools. They watched with the stillness of those who had been punished for hoping too loudly. Sarah sat in a strip of shade with Veyrra in her arms. Tavin stood nearby, speaking softly too. A cluster of young men whose anger kept pulling their eyes toward Asterion's officers. Do not give them the riot they want, Tavin said. If they want to show the galaxy we are animals, do not help them lie. Nora heard him and felt a hard flicker of respect. He was afraid. He had every right to be. But he stood there holding his people back from the one mistake Asterion could use. Kessa led Nora to the east basin, where a cracked stone plate lay half buried in dust. Together they cleared it. Beneath was a narrow maintenance shaft, old enough that the edges had been smoothed by generations of hands. Rocade followed with 2 officers. Stop! Nora did not look up. Medical emergency. This is your final warning. Kessa's hands stopped over the stone. Nora saw the tremor in her fingers. Kessa, she said low enough that only the young technician could hear. Look at me. Kessa did. You know this path. I know the filter. We do it together or not at all. Kessa swallowed. Together, they opened the shaft. The return path was tight, dark, and choked with mineral scale. Nora went in first because she had the stronger suit seals. Kessa followed because she knew which carved markers meant turn, drop, danger, and old water. The work became simple and brutal. Clear the scale. Set the intake. Anchor the hose. Test flow. Pull back when dust shifted. Keep breathing slow. Ignore the armed officers above. Ignore the drone. Ignore the fact that Counselor Pell had sent another order to Paula Grant, and Paula had forwarded it to Nora with only one sentence added. I cannot stop the order. I can keep the channel open. That was Earth, Nora thought as she tightened the intake in the dark. Not perfect, not fearless, but still holding the door. When they climbed out, Kessa's sleeves were torn and Nora's gloves were scraped white. Miles connected the return line to the ugly filter. Simon Avery's voice came through the live data channel from Earth. I have your readings. Nora, the first pass will not be enough. You need the second membrane stage. We know. Backwash risk. Bypassed. Contamination. High but workable. Child status. Nora looked at Sarah. Sera lifted violence. Hand. It barely moved. Bad, Nora said. Simon was quiet for one beat. Then do it right, but do it now. Rocade stepped forward as Miles primed the pump. If you activate that device, you will be detained. Owen moved into his path. You will have to step over me first. This is not your world. Owen's reply was even. No, but those are people. The pump began to move. At first, nothing happened. The hose twitched. The frame shook. Brown water coughed into the first chamber and spread through the sediment layer. The crowd made a low sound. Not hope yet, something more frightened. Nora watched the gauges. Hold pressure low. Miles adjusted. Holding. Kessa. First reading. Kessa stared at the panel. For a second, Nora thought fear had taken her. Then Kessa straightened. Sediment falling. Chemical load still high. Second stage. Miles opened the second valve. The filter groaned. The stream thinned. Rocade said, your device is failing. Nora ignored him. Kessa. Chemical load dropping. Again. Kessa read the next number. Her voice cracked. Dropping. The water entered the final chamber cloudy, then pale, then almost clear. Nora took a sample before anyone could touch it. The analyzer took too long. Every second had weight. The machine chimed. Nora read the result. Then she handed the scanner to Kessa. Kessa looked at it, as if it were a sacred thing and a dangerous thing at once. Nora said, your water, your reading. Kessa turned to the crowd. Her voice shook, but it carried. It is safe for emergency drinking. No one moved. Maybe they had been lied to too long. Maybe they were waiting for the tower to punish them. Maybe the body learns not to reach after enough empty cups. Sarah stood with Veyrra in her arms. She walked to the filter, each step slow. In her other hand, she carried a small bottle, one of the same kind Nora had found in the cargo compartment. She placed it under the spout. Nora looked at Rocade. He looked back at her, and for one terrible second, she thought he would order his officers to fire. It was not dramatic. It did not burst like a river. It did not wash the dust from the streets. It was a narrow stream, trembling in the heat, catching the last light of Veyrra's sun. Sarah lifted the bottle to Veyrra's mouth. Slow, Nora said softly. Sera no dead. Slow. The child drank. One swallow, then another. His eyes closed. His fingers moved against his mother's sleeve. Across the settlement, hundreds of Veyrrans watched a child drink water from a well they had been told they were too broken to touch. The broadcast drone was still live. Mira Dast had stopped speaking. On Earth, people saw it in recovery centers, kitchens, water plants, classrooms, shipyards, and public squares. They did not need to understand every clause of the contract. They did not need to know the chemistry. They saw a child drink, and they understood what had been withheld. Counselor Arvin Pell tried to call an emergency closed session. It was too late. The pressure that followed did not come from one speech or one leader. It came from ordinary people who had recognized something too simple to bury. Earth cities opened their own water stations in solidarity, letting cameras show long lines of humans, off-world workers, and refugees filling cups for free. Engineers requested the open filter design. Medical teams volunteered for the open water refuge. Farmers offered portable pumps. Universities offered lab time. Retired plumbers sent messages asking if old hands could still be useful. Paula Grant stood before the Earth Humanitarian Office and spoke for less than 2 minutes. Earth recognizes the Veyrran civilians of the lower wells as persons under emergency sanctuary protection. We will receive the sick and the vulnerable. We will not return evidence of abuse to the party accused of abusing them. We will not classify thirst as a billing dispute. And we will not ask any child to wait 12 days for water when a safe cup can be given today. Asterion called the statement reckless. 3 trade partners suspended mineral talks by evening. Asterion filed for sanctions before midnight. Nora heard all of it from inside the first well station while sitting on the floor beside the filter, drinking careful sips from her own canteen. She was exhausted enough that the room seemed to sway. Kessa sat across from her, staring at the running system. I thought it would be louder, Kessa said. What? Getting water back. Nora looked at the thin stream filling the emergency tank. Sometimes the most important things sound small. Kessa touched the edge of the control panel. Will they take it again? They will try. Will Earth stay? Nora answered honestly. Earth will argue with itself. It always does. Some will say this costs too much. Some will say it is not our problem. Some will say we should have waited. Kessa looked afraid again. Nora leaned forward. But the refuge is open. The data is public. The design is out. And you know how to run this now. That means the lock is broken in more than one place. Kessa looked back at the water. My teacher used to say that people are not free when they are given water. They are free when no one can take the well from them. Your teacher was right. She died with a red ration band. Nora did not reach for easy comfort. Then make the station work well enough to shame every red band they ever issued. Kessa nodded once. Outside, the first evacuation shuttle lifted from Veyrra with 37 children, 12 elders, and Sarah Navai holding Veyon against her chest. Sarah had resisted, leaving until Yellow spoke to her in the old language. Nora did not know every word, but Kessa translated later. He had said, "Go so the child learns to come back." The open water refuge on Earth was not ready for history. It had wet floors, temporary signs, tired nurses, and a filtration room that smelled of disinfectant and sea air. Volunteers moved too quickly, then slowed themselves when they realized the Veyrrans flinched at sudden gestures. Children were given water in small measure cups, because too much too fast could harm them. Elders sat under humidity tents and wept without sound as moisture touched their skin. Sarah arrived holding Veyon, who slept through Earth's gravity shift with one hand curled around his bottle. At the entrance to the refuge, a simple fountain had been installed in the courtyard. It was not decorative. It was a public water point with cups beside it and a drain below. Paula had ordered it put there before the first shuttle arrived. No cards, she had told the staff. No vans. No questions before water. When Sarah saw it, she stopped walking. A nurse asked, "Do you need help?" Sarah shook her head. She stepped toward the fountain and held her hand under the stream. Water touched her palm freely, with no light changing color, no alarm, no voice asking for debt status. She let out a sound that was not quite a sob. Then she touched two wet fingers to Veyon's forehead. The child stirred but did not wake. "What does that mean?" Paula asked softly. Sarah looked at the water on her son's skin. "It is what we do when a child is welcomed by the wells." Paula's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. Then welcome. After that, the evidence from Veyrra became impossible to bury. Simon Avery's report showed the contamination pattern. Miles Rowan's logs showed the bypass sabotage. Kessa Ruin's readings, taken live from the first well station, proved that Veyrran technicians could operate emergency filtration safely. Yellow Marin's map showed water paths older than Asterion's charter. The contract archives showed the 10-year emergency license that had somehow become a generational cage. Galactic Council did not apologize. Counselor Arvin Pell announced a temporary freeze on Asterion's exclusive enforcement rights in the Lower Wells region, pending full review. He called the situation deeply concerning. He called the evidence substantial. He called Earth's actions irregular but understandable under emergency conditions. Nora watched the announcement from a recovery room at the refuge, where Veyon was awake and eating crushed ice from a spoon. Owen stood beside her. Irregular but understandable. That is one way to say you were right. Nora folded her arms. No, that is one way to avoid saying they were late. On the screen, Pell continued. The Council would review similar water protection contracts across multiple systems. Asterion security forces were ordered to withdraw from the first well station. Local Veyrran technicians, under observation, will be permitted to operate emergency access points. Under observation. Permitted. Nora hated the words, but she saw Kessa's face on a second feed from Veyrra, standing at the station controls with Tavin beside her and Yellow behind her, and she knew that even ugly words could not fully hide what had changed. Kessa opened the flow to his second tank. This time, the people of Lower Wells did cheer. Not wildly, and not like a crowd in a victory broadcast. It was rougher than that, broken at the edges. Some laughed. Some bowed their heads. Some held bottles to their chests before filling them, as if the empty space inside had become part of the prayer. Yellow Marin walked to the edge of the old basin with a cup of clean water. He knelt slowly. Tavin tried to help, but Yellow waved him back. The old man poured 3 drops into the dust. The ground swallowed them at once. Kessa's voice came through the feed, quiet and translated. He is telling the ancestors the well remembers them. Nora turned away from the screen for a moment, not because she was ashamed of tears, but because some moments belonged first to the people who had survived them. A week later, the first bottle from the cargo compartment was moved from evidence storage to the refuge courtyard. Nora did not want a ceremony. Paula insisted on a small one. Sarah came with Veyrra, who could now stand with one hand on his mother's sleeve. Tavin had stayed on Veyrra. Kessa stayed too. Yellow was too old to travel, but he sent a message. The bottle was placed in a clear case beside the public fountain. It looked smaller there than it had in the cargo compartment. Scratched clay, worn lip, family mark on the side, a child's tally lines near the base. The plaque beneath it did not mention Asterion by name. It did not mention sanctions, contracts, or council review. It said only this: no one earns the right to drink. They are born with it. Nora stood at the back of the courtyard while people gathered. Umans, Veyrrans, port workers, nurses, a few off-world refugees from places that had nothing to do with Veyrra, but everything to do with locked doors. Owen came to stand beside her. You know they're going to ask you to speak. No, that sounded final. It was, you open the well, Nora. Kessa opened it. Sarah carried the bottle. Tavin sent the message. Yellow kept the map. Earth kept the door open. I just knew which valve to turn. Owen smiled a little. That may be the most you thing you have ever said. Across the courtyard, Veyrra pulled away from his mother and toddled toward the fountain. Sarah moved to catch him, then stopped herself. He reached up with both hands. A nurse helped him press the small lever. Water flowed. Veyrra held his cup under it. He drank one careful sip. Then he looked around and saw someone standing near the gate, a thin alien child from another transport, newly arrived and frightened by Earth's open sky. Veyrra walked over with the cup held in both hands. He offered it without a word. The other child looked at the water, then at the adults, as if waiting for a price to appear. No one asked for one. No band flashed red. No tower voice denied access. No contract opened its mouth. The child took the cup and drank. Nora watched from the back of the courtyard, and for the first time in many days, she allowed herself to breathe all the way in. The galaxy had sold rain, wells, rivers, springs, and the silence of thirsty people. It had written contracts around aquifers and called the Lock Civilization. It had told a whole community to wait politely while their children dried out in the dust. Earth had not fixed the galaxy with one well, one refuge, one ugly filter, or one woman who refused to hand back empty bottles. But when the last door was closing, someone from Earth opened one. Then another. Then a fountain. Then a path home. That was why the empty bottle mattered. It was never just a container. It was proof that someone had reached the edge of silence and still believed there might be one world left that would answer. Nora Hayes did not save the Veyrra people because it was easy. Earth did not open its doors because there was no cost. They did it because somewhere between a locked well and a thirsty child, the galaxy had forgotten what life was worth. And humanity remembered, not with a speech, not with a flag, not with a promise written safely from far away, but with a hand on a valve, clean water in a cup, and a refuge door left open for the next lost soul who had nowhere else to go. In a galaxy that had learned how to sell survival, Earth chose to give it back. And under a quiet sky on Earth, beside a simple public fountain, one empty bottle remained. Not as a monument to victory, but as a reminder. Some lives are not rescued by grand armies. Some lives are saved because one person refuses to call suffering normal. If this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who loves thoughtful science fiction, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about humanity standing where the rest of the galaxy would not. Your support helps these stories reach more listeners. And as always, thank you for spending your time here. May your day be peaceful. May your heart be lighter. And may you never forget that even in the coldest galaxy, one open door can still change everything.